Welcome into the Fantasy Guides podcast. My name is Andrew Teuscher, and I am joined today by the owner, the operator of Fantasy Guides and FantasyGuides.com, Stephen Rippey, and not this week by Jacob Rhodes. He had stuff to take care of, but don't worry. We'll still take care of you, Stephen. Got that All-22 shirt on. I love that thing. How you doing today?
Yeah, those are my boys, man. I'm good, man. I'm good. Dude, what do we got? Maybe one more episode of buy sell. I mean, we could do some dynasty ones, but we got trade deadlines for a lot of leagues. I think starting probably after this weekend's.
Stephen, you're breaking my heart. I didn't even realize that's where we're at in the season. I keep saying we're getting later and later, but dadgummit, you're right. And I need to put it out there on our trade episode. Push back your deadlines to the playoffs. Let people keep trading up into that point.
Yeah, I think at the very least, I like at least 2 weeks of regular season play before the playoffs. I think we have ours set at either right before week 13 or right after week 13. I'm not sure, Andrew. I have to double check on that. But I like that. I like not fully knowing right before the playoffs, like the best buys, but getting close. I like it.
Exactly. Laissez-faire, let them play. But today we are here to talk buys and sells. What players are going to get you to the playoffs? What players do you need in the playoffs? We've got a variety here for you. We're trying to double up if you're a winning record, you're kind of in for sure. Get these players now. Tough stretch, but great for the playoffs, and vice versa. Some of you are 4-5 and need to go, or what would be at this point, 5-5, whatever, and you need a home stretch to be good. There's some players that you're going to need or not want for that, and we're going to get you there. And that begins with one guy who is close to home for me. One Josh Downs is an excellent buy going forward. And he's excellent in the sense that I don't think that you're going to have an incredible ceiling. I just don't think it's there. You're going to have some big games, but he's not a top 5 receiver. But he is going to be steady Eddie for as long as Shane Steichen would love to keep pounding his head against a brick wall every single week and watch Joe Flacco throw a football for no reason, even though he's playing just as bad as AR, but he throws it more often, just as poorly. I mean, because we got to develop 40-year-old quarterbacks, right, Steven? You don't know whenever they could break out. Kill me.
You know, I don't think it was that bad of a thing to sit AR, but I would like to see AR go back into the lineup before the season ends. So, give him some time to basically all right, I need to clean up some things. I need to watch from Flacco, who, let's face it, Andrew, is a Super Bowl MVP.
Yes, he is.
Learn a few things and then get him back in there, especially if Joe Flacco keeps playing like he did more recently. But yeah, this is Jacob's buy, Josh Downs. I like that. I like the player, Andrew. I think he's a good player. He's had 22 points, 12 points, 14 points. He should have had 23 points this week. He dropped just an easy walk-in 9-yard touchdown that popped up on our missing points. So he could have had a bigger game. But look at these targets. He's had 10, 9, and 9 targets each of the last 3 weeks. 2 weeks before that, he had 9 targets, 12 targets, 9 targets. So he's getting the ball a ton. I think even with AR, he probably won't see targets that high. But I think Steichen's going to keep trying to get him the ball. So I love this buy. I love the player. I think either way, you're getting a decent floor.
And please, AR, get back in there. If he does get back in there, then this is the guy who's running routes short enough that AR can't miss. At least I'd like to think so.
Well, I wouldn't say can't miss.
He will have a harder time missing. And here's the thing. I've been saying for all season, I think Josh Downs is a better wide receiver than Michael Pittman. And I think Michael Pittman's a good receiver.
He's a good wide receiver. Yeah, exactly.
And the issue this year, though, Michael Pittman, Downs is good anyway. Pittman's going through a back injury. Buy low dynasty shares if you need to. He shouldn't be out in the field. It should have been a season ending or at least 6-week long break for him. So as long as Downs is out there, he is the wide receiver 1 for the team. He's going to get the majority of the targets. So he's the Colts wide receiver 1. If Flacco's in, he's a high-end wide receiver 2. And if AR comes back, he's just a regular wide receiver 2 who in good matchups could have big upside and a nice floor. So that's a wide receiver that we really like for you. Not the easiest schedule out there, but he'll keep producing. But Steven, you got a running back for us. Who are you buying this week?
My buy this week is one that I think this might be your only chance to get him at a little bit of a discount, and that's Kyren Williams. He's had back-to-back non-Kyren-like games. Sorry, Andrew, I'm trying to get him pulled up. I had Josh Downs still pulled up from the previous one, but yeah, he had 10 points this last night, and then before that he had 9 points. But the usage is still the same. He's getting the same usage. So I'm just going after the box score chasers or somebody that desperately needs to get into the playoffs and are a little bit worried. Get those panic owners, because 2 weeks ago he was so close to getting 2 touchdowns, which he usually gets those touchdowns. He was short on 2 different plays in the game. He could have had over 20 fantasy points 2 weeks ago. He didn't. This past week, like I said, he's still getting 90% of the snap share, 80% of the routes run, 80% of the rushing share. So he's getting all the same usage. He just, the points aren't there this week. Where did I lead off here? Oh, and a big thing, he has the fourth easiest remaining strength of schedule. So the schedule gets easy. He's still getting the usage. He's still a great player. I still believe in this offense, even though it looked abysmal last night. I think this offense will be better moving forward. So I think he's one of these guys that's going to get right back to 20 points per game.
Looking at these touches last week, or I guess this week, Monday Night Football against the Dolphins, he had 21 opportunities. Week before, he had 25 opportunities. Week before, 30 opportunities, 21 opportunities. He's never had less than 20 opportunities. He's had less than 20 opportunities one time this year in total. He's their red zone guy. The Rams put him in to score touchdowns. They put him in to be the premier back. I like Blake Corum, great back. Kyren Williams is their dude. Positive game scripts, he's scoring touchdowns and he's going to carry the ball 25 times. Negative game scripts, he's an incredible pass catcher. We saw it last game. We saw it against Minnesota in a really tight contest. You're going to keep seeing him on the field. And as Steven said, they're going to hit.
Yeah. Another thing, too, I think Blake Corum needs to be rostered as well. Whether you have Kyren or not, I think he's worth, if you've got the room on your bench, to just hold on to him, because we know McVay likes to use that one running back. And Kyron's not the biggest guy. If he gets a little banged up or misses any games, I think Blake Corum, because of that schedule, could fill in nicely.
Let's just look at some rest of season rankings comparisons for us. You're like, who would you rather have in terms of running backs? Because it's kind of hard to say. You're not really selling a running back 2-for-1 for Kyren. Like, I don't know what kind of caliber of player you'd have to do it for. Maybe we'll look at some receivers. But who would you rather have rest of season? Kyren Williams or Joe Mixon?
I would take Kyren.
Who would you rather have, Kyren Williams or Kenneth Walker?
I would go Kyren.
And lastly, Kyren Williams or Jonathan Taylor?
Kyren. Yeah, I'd take him over all those guys.
Those are a lot of big household names that you're going to have to consider whenever you're making a trade like this. Looking at some wide receivers, you could probably give up value. Let's just say you're stocked up at wide receivers, picked up a player, made a great trade earlier in the season. Go look to trade away a guy like, and we're not saying these are must sell, get rid of, but equal value players, I'd say. Could give up a DK Metcalf, a Terry McLaurin, a sell I see later I'll talk about, Jaden Reed, Garrett Wilson, all this caliber of guy that high-end wide receiver too, perfectly fine to ship off for Kyren Williams.
You know, somebody who I think I would look to sell, you know, assuming you can get something, is if you're like deep at wide receiver, is Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think that guy is living off of touchdowns right now, and he's got the second hardest schedule moving forward. Not that he's a little bit matchup proof, I think Kyren is, but just overall, the matchups will be harder. They're not always going to be down as much as they were just this last week against Houston. He's a guy that if you could get Kyren plus for, because he's been producing and Kyren's not, that's something I'd look at.
That was a guy we talked about on our matchup show on Sunday. Almond fraud St. Brown season a little bit, man. The targets haven't been there. The yards haven't been there. Like you said, he's scored it. He's getting points because he scored a touchdown in every game going back to week 3. That's what he's feasting off of. That won't keep up. We saw what they're mortal. The Lions are mortal offense. They will have some down weeks.
Yeah.
I like that call. Here's another running back you can go out and buy. This one is a bit cheaper for sure. So if you're not able to swing the Kyren Williams trade, maybe owners got both and say, hey, man, all right, that Bucky Irving guy, he's in a committee. I'll take him off your hands. And let it be known that that'd be a Donald deal to go and pick up. Bucky Irving, He's got the easiest remaining schedule for running backs. You could stop it there. He's been incredible in a good offense. Their offense is still top 5 on the season, even with weeks without Godwin and Mr. Mike Evans, who is going to return after the bye week. So do know Bucky Irving about to hit his bye week, but it just creates another opportunity to buy. So easiest remaining schedule, RB23 right now. That's something you can get yourself into. And not only is it an easy schedule for running back matchups, it's an easy schedule for winning games. And that is where Bucky Irving is shining. Rachaad White and Bucky Irving are splitting this backfield. I'm not saying it's a Bucky Irving takeover, and this really isn't a guy I think is going to ascend into an RB1 territory. I don't think it's there, but an RB2, he absolutely is there. He's been the RB23 so far, and I think that's going to continue because his next matchups are going to be easy, and they're going to run the ball a lot. About to go play against the New York Giants, the Carolina Panthers, Las Vegas Raiders, a tough one against the Chargers, but the Dakless Cowboys, and again, the Panthers in championship weekend. They're going to be up, and Bucky Irving is getting more rushing attempts than Rachaad White, so he's going to be the guy regardless, even in games against recently San Francisco, Kansas City, Atlanta, and Baltimore. Tough matchups, especially without your wide receivers. He's still getting 10 to 15 touches in all of them, and he's averaged 14 points per game. Wait until he gets into the game scripts where he's running constantly, looking like an absolute stud. I mean, Baker Mayfield's out here stiff-arming Nick Bosa, Liam Conan. You're making magic happen in Tampa, Florida. I want to go there. They have the Fountain of Youth, and they have Bucky Irving, and I want it.
Completely agree. Last week I had Rachaad White on this list of a buy, but I also said Bucky Irving as well. I said I think both of these guys rest of the season can be very good. These are Bucky's stat lines dating back to week 6. 18 points, 16 points, 15 points. Okay, he had only 6 points against Kansas City, but we knew that. We didn't think he'd have a good game there. And then he actually did better than I would have guessed against San Francisco last week, 17 points. White's been doing the same thing too. You look at his game log, it's not all that different. Like you said, they're basically splitting it. It is funny that the 195-pound running back, who was an amazing receiver at Oregon, is like their 2-down thumper.
Yep.
and then White's just the 3rd down back. But when you look at his efficiency running the ball, this is why we see Bucky Irving playing that role. If something happens to either one of these backs, especially White, because I know Bucky can do it all. He can catch the ball too. If something happens to Rachaad White, he's an RB1, definitely moving forward. So I love that buy. He's startable with White, and he's winning leagues if White gets injured.
Looking over at Fantasy Pros expert consensus rankings is just a way to tell you of this is how people view him. RB29 on that rest of the season. I think he needs to be up higher than that.
Low.
Here's some guys that are ranked ahead of him right now. Rest of season. Chuba Hubbard, I get that actually. I think they're pretty similar. Kareem Hunt, no. Nick Chubb, nope. Najee, I don't even think so. This is a better offense in Tampa.
Is this just this like Hunt getting the Chiefs bump, and then
everyone
Nick
loves
Chubb
him
getting the Nick Chubb bump?
It's just the names. People don't know Bucky Irving. Ramondre Stevenson's ahead of him. I would make that trade. J.K. Dobbins at this point.
Oh, I would take him over
about
Dobbins.
him. I'd like Dobbins more, but they're really, really close. Tony Pollard, I think, could be a sell right now. Brian Robinson, I'd rather have Bucky. Chase Brown, that's real close. That's a lot of. There are 12 names I could go until I'm like, yeah, Bucky's the same as this guy. Yeah. It's an incredible buy low.
Yep, I love it. Actually, I liked the name when I saw it, and then as we're talking through it, I like it even more.
It's just how people are viewing him, and that's where I think you get the best opportunity. Good player, good offense with opportunity, and people don't know his name. That's how you know you got a good buy. Well, here's a player we just talked about briefly there that we're going to sell, J.K. Dobbins. Steven, why is he a sell? I mean, it's Jacob's sell, but please explain him on Jacob's behalf.
Well, I think part of the thing that was frustrating with Dobbins the first couple weeks while we still had Gus Edwards is we were just worried about the amount of work he was going to get. Like week 1 with Gus Edwards, he only got 10 rushing attempts. This past week, he still got the majority of the work, but he was getting like close to 30 touches a couple weeks ago. And then this past week, he got 15 rushing attempts, which is decent. It's not bad, but Gus Edwards got 10. Gus Edwards actually looked good this week. I just think it's going to be one of those things. I think Harbaugh wants to use more of a committee. I think Dobbins, was sort of forced into more of a prominent role because of the Gus Edwards injury. I think we're going to still see more committee because he wants to run the ball a lot. I know that they have Justin Herbert and they want to give him some work, but they just can't help themselves. They want to run the ball. I think we see more Gus Edwards. The schedule for Dobbins isn't great moving forward. I think he's got the 8th most difficult schedule moving forward.
It's tough to be noted, and Jacob gave it in our Cliff Notes that he handed over to us. Tough immediate schedule, only plays bottom 10 matchups. Bottom 10 is you don't want to face them.
Yeah.
Now their playoff schedule is nicer, but if you're one of those teams who's around 500 or a little below, this is a dude you got to ditch.
Yeah. Yeah, and he had those first 2 games against Vegas and Carolina where he was efficient. And then he was abysmal for 6 straight weeks. He was under 4 yards per carry. And then, he played Cleveland, and actually that one he surprised me. He was back up to 6 yards per carry, and then boom, Tennessee right back down to 3.3 yards per carry. So he hasn't been that efficient. Hasn't done that much in the receiving game. I just think unless he scores a touchdown, I think he's going to struggle for you. I don't think that the ceiling's very high. I think he's just going to be one of these guys that gets you like maybe 10 points per week in a lot of these matchups. Maybe some of these good ones, we get to the playoffs. I could see him doing better. Tampa Bay, Denver, New England. If you're a lock for the playoffs, not a must sell by any means. I think you can hold on to him, but I just don't think the ceiling's going to be there.
When your buddy opens the sleeper app after getting a trade from you as you're trying to sell them J.K. Dobbins, they're going to hop over, see that he's the RB15 on the season.
Yeah.
And I think he was the RB15 on the season. Like, that was good usage. That's where he should be. But it's going to change. We're not saying he's going to be the RB36 rest of season, but I think he's going to be closer to that than the RB15. Let's put him right around RB24 to RB28, 30, like back in that range. Totally usable. If you don't get rid of him, it's not like you're getting a nothing burger, but you're definitely getting rid of a lot of upside. As let's say they're blowing a team out. Let's say they march into what's a game they have coming up. They march into Atlanta and they start beating the snot out of them, or Tampa Bay falls apart. They beat the snot out of them. Well, they're going to put Gus Edwards in to close the game because they don't want Dobbins hurt because he's still their starter. It's just the ceiling is gone.
Well, who was the running back that got the rushing touchdown this past week?
Hassan Hoskins,
Yeah,
fellow alum to my high school.
Oh, really?
Indeed.
Oh, well, there you go. There's a name drop. I mean, let's just point that out. Gus Edwards didn't even. We have to worry about him. I don't even remember his name anymore, Andrew. It already escaped me. But a third back, not even Kamani Vidal stealing rushing touchdowns. That worries me a little bit. I think also, if you want to go off of name value, that we just talked about Bucky Irving, I just suspect more people would prefer Dobbins over Bucky Irving. I think that's a 1-for-1 I would easily do, but who knows? Maybe you can get more. A lot of times with these kind of trades, I like to do 2-for-1s. So if I'm loaded at running back and Dobbins is my 4th running back, let's say, because for a lot of teams he could be, you package him with another player to upgrade.
Add some depth. Still not a must get rid of unless you're someone who really needs to make the playoffs. Then I'd probably try it a little harder, but certainly someone whose value is about to take a hit. Steven, speaking of values taking hits, who is your next sell?
So I mentioned him a few weeks ago, and I said this is not an immediate sell. This was a sell high if you can get it, and that is DeAndre Swift, and that was after he finished as the RB3, RB2, and RB6. He had played the Rams when the Rams were completely banged up and had no offense, and just were punting the ball back to teams left and right. And then he had Carolina, which we know is one of the worst defenses in the league, and then he had Jacksonville, another one of the worst defenses in the league. And I said, not a must sell, but I just think things will get harder. Well, he's been fine. Against Washington at 18 points was the RB11 that week. And then last week, 13 points was the RB19. This week, 7 points, the RB32. So we're starting to see the air start to leak out a little bit of DeAndre Swift, and I think it continues to do so. The schedule gets difficult going forward. He has, let me pull up my notes, Andrew. He faces the 3rd hardest strength of schedule moving forward. 4 out of the 7 games he has coming up are versus top 6 defenses versus the running back position. This offense is a mess, too. I know they just fired Shane Waldron. I don't know. It might help a little bit, but I'm not expecting big changes there. This offense is just a mess. I kind of want out of this offense for this season, to be honest. I know I was saying buy the receivers there for a while. I think I just want to wash my hands of it. And I think that includes DeAndre Swift. I would say I'm a little bit more of a panic sell on him. I don't know if you agree with me. Before, a couple weeks ago, I was like, sell high. I still think because we're only 1 week removed from him having all those good games, I think you could still get decent value for him. I think it's going to start to get really bad.
Here's who we had those good games against. The LA Rams, who are a better defense now. We just watched them play pretty well on Monday night. They weren't the same defense. They had a lot of rookies who've been playing up. So that was a bad run defense. He had a good game against the Carolina Panthers. He had a good game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He had a good game against the Washington Commanders. And he couldn't have a good game against the Arizona Cardinals. Like, he was playing some bad defenses who he was running all over, some stagnant defenses, and he probably will run into some more of those good matchups along the way, like maybe one or two there. And he's still getting the volume, so we still like to see that, so he will run into those.
I think the usage will still be okay. So I think that his floor is probably okay. I don't think he's going to completely kill you every week, but I just don't think the ceiling's there. I mean, he just played the Patriots. That's not a very good defense against the running back. They're top 10, I guess, of defenses you want to exploit. He only scored 7 points. I think things get a little more difficult when you play Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit, San Francisco, Minnesota again, Detroit again. We just thought Joe Mixon couldn't do anything against Detroit. He's got Detroit twice coming up. So I think things get really bad over the next 6 weeks.
And here's the thing. If we're talking about usage, and that's why he's been incredible, them switching OCs is not a good thing. It's not necessarily a horrible thing, but if you're wanting the offense to improve, I'd bet DeAndre Swift. That doesn't mean DeAndre Swift is going to get more carries. Like, oh, he's been good for it, let's give him. They can't. So there's only an opportunity for him to get less carries, less work, them to say, season's over, let's see what Roshan Johnson's got. Let's mix some more guys in. I'm not saying it's going to go down, but with the new OC, it's not going to go up. The only place it could go is down, and that's where you have to have even a little bit of concern there, even though I think the usage will be fine. With the matchups getting harder, yeah, that's not where you want to be heading if you're an owner of DeAndre Swift.
I just realized too, Andrew, 2 weeks ago against the Cardinals when he had 13 fantasy points, he caught 6 passes in that game. So, like, he only had 13 points on 6 passes. The 6 receptions isn't going to happen very often for Swift. The other thing that I would point out, I know he didn't miss any games last year, but for the majority of his career, this is a guy that doesn't hold up well to high usage. And he has been getting high usage, so I would not be shocked if we saw this guy get dinged up. So I don't know. When you just add it all up, he's a guy I'm slightly panic selling.
Play the stock market. This stock has hit an all-time high. It can really only go down.
Well, it's lower now. I think this is a little bit of a sell low, but I think it could get worse.
Yeah, it's coming down, similar to Dobbins. Just not an absolute nothing, but maybe a time to get out. One last sell. Speaking of not an absolute nothing, but time to get it out. Holy cow! The Dallas Cowboys offense is going to be one of the worst in the NFL the rest of the season. And I don't care how good CeeDee Lamb is. This was disgusting. Steven, they had 66 passing yards in a game against the Eagles.
You just made a noise I've never heard before.
Because I just watched a game so bad I had never seen something so horrific before. The stadium they play in is even preventing them from scoring. So if the quarterback's not playing bad enough, the sun is going to shine through the stadium window in a way that only Jerry Jones would allow, and it's going to blind him from catching a touchdown that would have given him a better fantasy week. But no, we even have to worry about the sun. Even the sun is fighting the Dallas Cowboys. Mike McCarthy is also putting a blindfold over everyone's eyes, and somehow, because they're not saying that he's a problem, all of the players don't like him. There's just negative comments everywhere. The only human being that likes Mike McCarthy is his wife, his mom, and Jerry Jones. That's it. No one else. Like, not even positive vibes here, not even a vibes guy. People don't like Mike McCarthy, and he's not coaching well, yet he's still there. Lamb is going to struggle. And the Dallas Cowboys offense is going to get worse. Before, I was buying the offense because you had Dak Prescott that gave you a floor, and they were going to have good matchups coming up. But that's not going to happen with Cooper Rush and Trey Lance. The Dak Prescott floor that Mike McCarthy was taking credit for is gone. And now Trey Lance had to step in for Cooper Rush, and Trey Lance is terrible. Things are only getting worse. They were the third offense in points per game before Dak went out, or that includes this last week. So one Dak-less game that's where they were. That still wasn't good. Think about if you put CeeDee Lamb on last year's Carolina Panthers. That's the roster that is now the Dallas Cowboys. Their run game is terrible. Their offensive linemen aged and hurt. The wide receivers around Lamb, usually like, oh, they're bad, so that's awesome, so more targets. They're so inept, they're not going to move the ball. This is horrible. It's just terrible. I think I would rather have Josh Downs with Joe Flacco in almost any game over CeeDee Lamb, and the Colts offense stinks. But that's how bad we might get with this Dallas Cowboys offense. Trade the name, go out and get you. I'll pull up some receivers as you're talking, Steven. This is misery in Dallas.
I get it. I'm going to push back a little bit, though. There's people that listen that have CeeDee Lamb, and I don't want them, feeling this depressed, Andrew. So I'm going to push back a little bit on it. And here's why. Okay, so I know that the Cowboys threw for 66 passing yards?
66 yards.
I had to triple check when I was doing, because I did my write-ups last night for the NFC East in our recaps post, and I had to triple check that. I was like, was that really the number? 66 passing yards? I will say, though, Lamb still had 10 targets in that game. And, Andrew, would we be panicking quite as much if he doesn't get blinded, if he doesn't get like that, it looked like one of those magnifying glasses on an ant, blinded, he catches a touchdown pass. And now he's got, let's say, 15, 16 fantasy points against Philadelphia instead of the 8 that he scored.
So he would have had 35 receiving yards and a touchdown? No, I would have just been saying the buy low, the sell high opportunity just got better.
Well, I think I would probably be more on board with it then. Here's the thing. Cooper Rush, he had to fill in for Dak 2 years ago. And this was before CeeDee Lamb was the CeeDee Lamb we know today. This was like emerging CeeDee Lamb. And these are his games with Cooper Rush. You're not going to let me say it?
I don't want to, because here's the thing. This is a worse offense. Zeke, that was good Zeke back then. And Zeke was even going down. That was a good offensive line back then. That was with a good Brandon Cooks. That was with a good Dalton Schultz. Those are all gone.
Well, it was a better offense.
It was a much better offense.
So do I get to read these game logs or not?
No! Sure.
I'm going to. So he had 15, 22, 21, 10, and 12 fantasy points with Cooper Rush the last time he had to fill in. It's not going to be 66 passing yards per game bad. He's got Houston coming up. He's got Washington. He's got the Giants. He's got the Bengals. He's got Carolina. He's got Tampa Bay. These are all teams that receivers do well against. All teams you can throw on. No, he's not going to be a top 5 wide receiver moving forward. I think he moves more to like a back-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. If you're going to tell me he's still going to get 10-plus targets a game, which I think he will, I think he's still going to get those targets. He got 12. Cooper Rush has started 2 games. He's got 22 targets over those games. So I think he's still going to get a ton of volume. He's a better receiver than he was 2 years ago. I get it. The offense isn't great, but I'm just saying, do not give this guy away for nothing. Get something good in return at the very least, because I think he'll be giving you wide receiver 2 numbers at worst.
Players I'd rather have rest of season, and I'm looking at ECR, and these are the names right around him. I would rather have Mike Evans. I'd rather have Zay Flowers. I'd rather have Devontae Smith. I'd rather have, assuming that the injury isn't going to keep him out long term, rather have Darnell Mooney, rather have DeAndre Hopkins, rather have Josh Downs. I'd rather have Amari Cooper if he comes back. I'd rather have Tank Dell.
That no way is probably Amari Cooper. There's no way I'd rather have Amari Cooper.
If Amari Cooper comes back full time, that is where we're at. That's a coin flip.
No, I don't think it's a coin flip. Some of those other names too. I don't think I'd rather have Darnell Mooney. I think Josh Downs that's questionable. I get what you're saying, but those guys also have some of their own issues as well. They have better target competition. They have maybe not as bad a quarterback issues, but they have quarterback issues themselves. So
they have name value issues. You put some respect on wide receiver 8 on the season, Darnell Mooney.
Yeah. No, I like Mooney. I'm just saying I'd still rather have Lamb.
I was just curious on the Mooney stats, so I had to look it up. But that is ourselves. I'm getting out. Dallas, you're done. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Fantasy Guides podcast. Hit the like button, subscribe, rate, review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you go to your local library and listen to the CD version of our podcast, that's not real. Don't look for that. But please
Local
rate,
library.
review wherever you find us. Get a weekly season guide for less than the price of a large pizza. Honey, we don't need to go out this week. We don't need to see that movie. I need a season guide because I want to win a championship. It's an investment because you're going to win your league. Go follow our page on Instagram, X, TikTok, everywhere at Fantasy Guides. You want some trade advice? Get into the comments below. I'll be personally responding to those. Get in my DMs. Find me at ToysherFG. I'll put that in the description below as well. I'm Andrew Toysher. That's Stephen Rippey. Stephen, say goodbye to the friends at home.
All right. Good luck this week, guys.